Canada's anti-spam legislation, also known as CASL, C-A-S-L, comes into force on July 1st. The advice that I'm giving to individuals and organizations is that prior to July 1st, this is a great opportunity to go out and seek express consents from people you'd like to send commercial electronic messages to. Conversely, after July 1st, if there's an implied consent that can be relied on under the legislation, I'm suggesting that individuals and organizations take the time to turn that implied consent into an express consent. Under Canada's anti-spam legislation, if someone is sending a commercial electronic message and they're not able to rely on one of the exemptions under the legislation, they have to meet a number of requirements. The first one is they have to either have express consent or be able to rely on an implied consent to be able to send that message. In addition, in sending that message, they have to meet certain informational requirements set out under the legislation. And some of those requirements are identifying who's sending the message, providing certain prescribed contact information, and also making available an unsubscribe mechanism so people can opt out of receiving future commercial electronic messages. Canada's anti-spam legislation deals with more than commercial electronic messages. The legislation also deals with the unsolicited installation of computer programs. So if somebody wants to install a computer program on another person's computer system, they need to have the express consent of either the authorized user of the computer system or the owner of the computer system. There's also a number of other requirements under the legislation related to computer programs if they provide certain functionality. If you are installing computer software, and that may also include an app that perhaps is being installed on a smartphone, that it's very prudent to become familiar with the requirements of the legislation. Canada's anti-spam legislation has some very stiff penalties. In fact, some of its penalties are the stiffest of any legislation in Canada. If you're in doubt if you can do something under the legislation, take the time and double check. The penalties under the legislation include administrative monetary penalties, which can run up to $1 million per individual per violation under the Act, and for organizations and corporations, the penalty can run up to $10 million per violation. The advice that I give to individuals and organizations is to take the time now to familiarize yourself with the various requirements of the legislation. One of the things an organization can do is do an internal review or audit of its internal practices related to the sending and receiving of commercial messages, and to get an understanding of what's actually happening within an organization. Then once you have that information, you can then build in processes, policies, procedures that ensure that an organization can remain compliant with the legislation. The government has set up a website at fightspam.gc.ca, which provides helpful tips and information to individuals and organizations looking to become compliant with the legislation.